The 8th generation of Pokemon was not that long ago, but at the same time, it's also been 5 years. So it's about time we revisit it and take a look at some secrets of the Sword and Shield generation that you may not know about. This is the big finale for this Secrets series of mine, as with this video, I will have covered every generation to this point. So let's make this finale a good one and get right to it. So today's Galar secrets are being brought to you by the one and only Folkachi. If you haven't heard, I am making my own monster catching video game called Histrobi Chronicles, and it's gonna be awesome, but it needs all the support it can get. That is where Folkachi comes in, as this little guy is the mascot of the game, and he's now available in super soft and squishy plush form. Not only that, but all orders of the plush also come with this exclusive Folkachi promo card that you won't be able to get anywhere else, and the quality on it is honestly amazing. If you enjoy my content and like the bigger projects I do, like the Histrobi Chronicles game, grabbing a plush and a card is one of the best ways to support and help make this content happen. And you can do so by going to histrobishop.com with the link in the description. The plushes are genuinely amazing, the card is incredible, and it all supports the channel a ton. So check that out by going to histrobishop.com with the link in the description, and thank you guys as always for all of your support. Okay, so let's begin with the Generation 8 region itself. Galar likely gets its name from a pretty interesting source, as it likely comes from the Irish word Galar, meaning disease, which would be in reference to Eternatus and its role within the region as a poison-type Pokemon. This is all the more likely due to a nickname that Great Britain also has, which serves in large part as the inspiration for the Galar region. The nickname is Blighty, with the word blight also being in reference to disease, and once again connecting to Eternatus and the Irish word Galar. It's pretty plain to see just how British Galar truly is, but there are also some smaller British inspirations to it that are easy to miss, like for instance Flapple's signature move, Grav Apple. This move is most likely based on the famous story of Isaac Newton and his theory of gravity being inspired by him observing an apple falling from a tree. This is even seen in the animation of the move as well, further adding to the reference. Another thing that very expressively shows off Galar's Britishness is the curry mechanic, which can benefit your Pokemon in different ways. The curry mechanic is quite extensive, so much so in fact that there is even a curry dex that catalogs all the different types of curry that are available. In total, there are 151 types of curry documented in the curry dex, which is a likely reference to the original 151 Pokemon of the Gen 1 Pokedex. Sword and Shield were also the first Pokemon games to have a DLC expansion, and one of the new characters that was introduced in that expansion was Honey. Honey is the wife of Mustard, who runs the dojo on the Isle of Armor, but even though she is somewhat prestigious in that way, she didn't exactly get that treatment from the character designers, because her design literally just reuses the design of the beauty trainer class from these games and just recolors it, and then just gives her a distinct face and hairstyle to set her apart. But otherwise, the two designs are the exact same. Another character from the Isle of Armor that does have a unique design though is Clara, but even she has an interesting quirk related to her appearance. Her League card makes somewhat of a pop culture reference, as you can see that Slowbro is kinda looking a bit strange in the background. This is likely a reference to a sort of modern day trend, if you will, where people will sometimes Photoshop pictures of themselves to make themselves look better, but fail to notice some obvious evidence of the Photoshop in the background, which not only accurately reflects Clara's kind of vain personality, but is also a pretty good reference to modern day culture from Game Freak. Another thing from the Sword and Shield DLC is Calyrex and both of its rider forms. These forms have a signature ability known as One, which is actually a reference to another Game Freak game. The Japanese name of this ability, Jinba Itai, is the same name as that of a mechanic from Pocket Card Jockey, the horse racing solitaire-like game that was also developed by Game Freak. The mechanic in question is known as Unity Power in English, which definitely checks out, especially because of the Reigns of Unity that fuse Calyrex and both of its steeds together. Generation 8 wasn't just Galar though, so I wanted to include a couple cool tidbits about Pokemon Legends Arceus as well. One really cool attention to detail in this game that I just barely noticed when doing research for this video has to do with the character Sabi. Sabi is a warden for the Diamond Clan that hangs out in the Alabaster Icelands, and that winter hat that she's wearing is actually a Russian Cossack hat. And this is definitely more than just some random hat that they decided to put on Sabi's head, because the inspiration for Hisui, the Hokkaido region of Japan, is extremely close in proximity to Russia, especially the northern edge of the region, which is exactly where Sabi can be found in the Alabaster Icelands, making for a pretty cool nod to the origins of the Hisui region. One well-known thing about Legends Arceus is that the music of Jubilife Village progressively builds and grows throughout the game as the village does the same. This is an awesome detail that's pretty easy to notice, but something that's a little more subtle is that the melody of Jubilife City's theme is played by a different instrument depending on where you are in town. If you're simply within the town itself, a flute will play the melody. If you're within your quarters, a violin will play the melody, and if you're in one of the other buildings in town, an oboe will play it instead. And while you're in your quarters listening to that violin, there's another cool secret that can be found here as well. There are a set of rules that can be observed within your quarters, and while they might seem pretty standard, they're actually a reference to a set of rules that Professor Rowan lists off while talking to a Team Galactic grunt in Jubilife City in Pokemon Platinum. Let's go ahead and get back to Galar though, and a cool fact that serves as a very nice touch to one of the region's starter Pokemon concerns Inteleon. Inteleon being based on a spy is pretty likely due in part to the fact that its pre-evolution Sobble is Pokemon number 007 in the Galar Pokedex, which is obviously also the number known to be attributed to the famous movie spy James Bond, who also has his roots within the UK, which is obviously the basis for the Galar region and Pokemon Sword and Shield, where Sobble and Inteleon originate. Another rather infamous Pokemon from Galar is Greedent, and a cool little extra detail about Greedent is that whenever it's damaged, a Lepaberry will fall out of its tail, falling in line with its berry hoarding nature. Meanwhile, some counterpart Pokemon from Galar are the Hatenna and Impidimp lines. These Pokemon are in fact counterparts to one another and parallel each other as such in various ways, but one way that could fly over your head is that they're both based around hair of all things. Impidimp, as it evolves, progressively involves more hair within its designs until it evolves into Grimmsnarl and is completely covered by it. And the same exact thing is basically also happening with Hatenna's evolutions as well, making for a rather unique connection between these two Pokemon families. In addition to the Pokemon of Galar, its human characters also have interesting things to offer as well. For example, Milo, the first gym leader in the region, wears a jersey with the number 831 on it, which is also the national Pokedex number of Wooloo, which is a Pokemon that Milo extensively works with as a farmer. If you've watched the previous videos in this series, you'll also know that I am a big fan of concept art, and Milo has also got some cool stuff in his concept art as well. His concept art reveals that he actually has a younger brother, providing another interesting layer to his character. Another cool concept art tidbit comes from Kabu's concept art, as here we can see a couple of different and interesting looks at him, including one look of him in a different outfit with a large overcoat on, and then another that shows another look at his younger appearance, which we only really get to briefly see in the games via one of his league cards, which makes this pretty interesting and cool. One of my favorite Galar-related secrets concerns Hop, one of the player's rivals and the brother of Leon, Galar's champion. If you take a close look at him, you will be able to see that Hop's hairstyle resembles a crown, which is likely in reference to him being the brother of Galar's champion and therefore effectively kind of like royalty within the Galar region. This theme is further solidified through his older brother Leon, who has a crown symbol on the underside of his hat, as if he is also wearing a crown himself. One character that does not appear in the games, but was a key character in the anime during Gen 8 was Go, Ash's primary travel companion in Pokemon Journeys. In episode 126 of Pokemon Journeys, which interestingly was also only released in Japan due to it being a clip show episode, the password of Go's Rotom phone is revealed to be 5555, which is not only a terrible password, like come on Go, get it together, but it's also a pun on Go's name, as the number 5 can be read as Go in Japanese. Before we turn back to the games, let's cover a few more things outside the games. This next one is actually a little bit of both though, because it concerns a track that was included on the Sword and Shield Super Music Collection, but was never actually used in the games themselves. A short jingle known as Reach Goal in Rotom Rally is included on this album, even though it isn't actually used in the games and is not heard when reaching the goal in a Rotom Rally, making for a rather interesting situation. Another thing that went unused in Sword and Shield are female gym trainers in the Spikemouth Gym. You only ever battle male gym trainers here, but that doesn't seem to be like it was always the intent, as a model and battle animations for female Spikemouth gym trainers are present within the game's data. More content from these games that seems like it was cut has to do with a potential encounter with Victini. An actual Victini encounter was added into Sword and Shield along with the Crown Tundra DLC, where Victini would have appeared at level 70. However, this encounter ended up going unused, and it's unknown how it would have actually played out. What makes this all the more interesting though is that it definitely seems like a Victini encounter was intentionally planned, not only because of the data, but due to Victini's theme of victory lining up quite well with Sword and Shield's overall theme of becoming the absolute best, especially as it relates to the gym challenge. So it seems like some kind of event or storyline was actually intended here that involved Victini that was ultimately not used for some reason. One of the staples of the gym challenge in Sword and Shield is undoubtedly the ball guy, if for no other reason than he's kind of a bit weird. Nevertheless though, he garnered quite the following during Gen 8, so much so that he was actually carried over to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in Gen 9 in a way that you might not have noticed. You can actually obtain a Ball Guy helmet via the Porto Marinata auctions after completing a side quest where you tutor the admins of Team Star. You are also able to get the helmets of Team Magma, Team Aqua, and even the helmet of the expansion suit from Pokemon X and Y in this same way. These items are all introduced within the Indigo Disc DLC, and the side quest that you have to complete to get them, which is tutoring the admins of Team Star like I mentioned, is very easy to just miss entirely, let alone actually complete. So I figured there would probably be a few people out there who hadn't caught wind of this stuff quite yet for whatever reason, and would make it worth a mention. Back to Sword and Shield though, one of the unique things that these games introduced were the concept of sponsors for the various gym leaders and other trainers within the Galar League, and along with this also introduced a lot of companies that provided these sponsorships. They're basically just cosmetic in terms of their function, but one cool thing about them is that many of the companies are actually references to real-world companies, such as KFC, Puma, the London Underground, and even Paramount. There's even a company called Yoshida's Coffee that is named after one of Game Freak's developers, Hironobu Yoshida. A neat little feature that the games don't tell you about, but is still a nice touch nevertheless, involves the Dusk Ball. During the Darkest Day event towards the end of Sword and Shield, the Dusk Ball will actually gain its additional effect of having a 3 times catch rate, which is not only a nice attention to detail, but is also very fitting for an event called the Darkest Day. This also occurs within Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl at New Moon Island. No doubt in order to coincide with Darkrai, which obviously has a similar sort of connection to the Dusk Ball. Another one of the big features of Sword and Shield, meanwhile, was the Wild area, which began Pokemon's foray into more open-world gaming. There's a location in the Wild area that many might remember known as Arceus Eye. The reason they might remember it is due to it being named after Arceus, and this is the case because the wild area itself actually resembles Arceus' head if it were to be facing towards the left, with Arceus' eye being in the spot where Arceus' eye would actually be. Another thing relating to Sword and Shield that seems to be happening more and more these days, which is freaking awesome, involves Dreepy. A new species of spider that was recently discovered, known as Phrenorachne dreepy, was named after Dreepy due to its triangular abdomen, which resembles Dreepy's head. I didn't really anticipate living in a world where so many new animals and other things would be named after Pokemon the way they have been lately, but I am absolutely here for it. And those were 25 secrets that you may not have known about Generation 8. And with that, that currently completes this secret series, at least until Generation 10 rolls around anyway. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you haven't seen the other videos in this series, you can check them all out in my Facts and Trivia playlist, which I will be linking on screen. Also, be sure to leave a comment if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe for more, and if you would like, you can even check out my Pokemon remixes over on Spotify or wherever you get your music to further support the channel and the making of videos just like this, which is super duper appreciated. With that said, I'll be back with another new video very soon, and until then, as always, thanks so much for watching this one, I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.